Welcome everyone to the Dean's Cottage Jim Bieneman Studio at Common Ground on the Hill on the campus of McDaniel College. We're excited to be bringing you some music today that will give you a hint as to what's going to be coming down the pike. Today, we're very excited to have with us a wonderful multi-instrumentalist and national champion of many stripes, who is now living in Baltimore and will be featured in a concert. We welcome Bryan McDowell. And Bryan, what might you have in store for us? What's your first tune for us today?
Oh, I guess I could start out with something on the fiddle. That's where I. That's where I started my musical journey. So maybe I'll try a fiddle tune in A. Maybe a tune from Arvil Freeman. Arvil Freeman, the fiddler who I learned from, and this would be 40 West.
40 West. Great. Wow. 40 West?
40 West, yeah, that's actually... Oh, let me get into this other mic here. Yeah, 40 West. That's actually a song, I believe it was written by Ralph Lewis down in North Carolina. He had a band. Ralph passed away a few years ago, but he had a band, Ralph and the Sons of Ralph. Mm-hmm. And Don Lewis and Marty Lewis played with them. And they were close with Arvil. So Arvil ended up recording that song on a record back in the 70s called Saturday Night Fiddlin'. And that was
40 West, I would assume.
Yeah, I-40.
Refers to I-40. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Going through the gorge there, heading over to Nashville, essentially. Yeah. That was the drive that Ralph did for many years when he was on the road with Bill Monroe. Right. So, Bryan McDowell, are you from North Carolina? I was born in Tampa.
It's great Florida fiddling tradition down there.
You know, funnily enough, of course, Vassar Clements is from down there.
Yeah, Harry Orlov, who's our engineer here today, played with Vassar.
Yeah, I'm aware, and
toured.
I'm intimidated, duly intimidated. Vassar, one of the greatest. Is kind of still the guy that of everyone kind of inspires me most.
There's only one Vassar.
Exactly.
Right.
And then, there's a long tradition. I guess Chubby Wise and Aubrey Haney. I'm blanking on some others, but I know there are some others.
So did you hear a lot of fiddle music as a kid?
My dad was really the guy who was responsible for getting me into music and this style of music.
Your dad played or plays?
He plays clawhammer.
Uh-huh.
But when my sister was born, he had to put it down because he couldn't keep Emma away from. He couldn't keep her hands off the instrument. So, but he always had a love for music, and he would play games with us as a kid, and he'd ask us, what is that instrument there? The important thing is to, in the beginning, to kind of be able to identify, just to pick out, make sense of what you're listening to. It's sort of like a part of your environment. And I identified the fiddle. That was the one that I really wanted, and I wanted to learn how to play it. And I just took a few lessons down there, and then we moved to, I really don't have much memories from Florida, but when we got to North Carolina, it was about a year or so before we found Harville Freeman. And at that point, I had worked with Wayne Erbsen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're,
Sure.
Right. So he has tons of Melbay books. He's been a great educator.
When you say you worked with him, you were
sorry, not worked with. I was in a group. Yeah. Took lessons from him.
I was going to say you took off early.
Yeah. Went on the road at 6. So
you moved into a real hot spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was in Western North Carolina or Central?
It was close to Asheville.
Yeah.
Canton, to be precise.
Yeah.
About 30 minutes west of there. And that's where I started working with, started taking lessons from Wayne Erbsen at Warren Wilson College. He had some group lessons over there. And then within about a year or so, I got in with Harville, who was teaching at the time in Asheville, and took off.
Wow. So, okay, so let's take it to the point where you're 16. What were you doing at 16?
16, I was, locked in my room for 8 hours a day practicing, pretty much. I was really actually focused on guitar quite a bit by that point. I had taken a lesson from Brian Sutton, who was also from that area, and that was really inspiring. I was beginning to get into I had much stronger influences from jazz by that point. It's not really something that I continued very much, but I was kind of exploring I was exploring jazz theory and reading about that and trying to kind of work some of those harmonies into what I was playing at the time.
So you're 16, you're 8 hours a day locked in a room practicing.
Yeah.
So does that tell me that you were homeschooled?
How did you know? Was it from the dumb look on my face?
No, it's not the look. It's like, where do you get 8 hours?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was homeschooled.
Great.
No, that wasn't 8 hours every day. I should say.
But still, you could follow your bliss and go after
it.
Right. Yeah.
And also, I mean, I was during the summers anyway. I was performing with my sister around there, and she's got a great voice and ended up being a great fiddler as well. She lives up in Pennsylvania now, and she'll actually be at this show.
At your concert on the 18th of November here. Wonderful. So at which point did you start entering contests? And what we can tell our listeners now is that you have won a number of contests. In reading your bio, it looked like there was this period of time where you were a contest fiend, like playing at a lot of different contests.
Yeah, I was all over it. I started competing in regional contests when I was younger. Of course, I mean, everybody, there's a history there.
Right.
You don't just like explode onto the scene, but mostly stayed around North Carolina and Georgia. I guess a little bit over in Tennessee until I was 18. And then the difference maker for me was that there was a summer that I had intended to be on the road and then wasn't for multiple reasons with different bands, and I took the time to go after these contests that were that had better prizes, essentially.
Yeah.
They gave instruments away.
Right.
That was the important
Get
kind
some
of difference
instruments.
maker.
Yeah.
So I focused on that at the time. I think a number of those contests have fizzled out at this point, but at the time that was a pretty prominent thing. So Merle Fest and Ossipee Valley, up in Maine. Rocky Grass was another. Wayne Henderson Festival. Winfield.
Right.
I don't know if I'm leaving any out, but I went to all those spots.
And what about Weezer?
No, I never made it to Weezer.
You didn't go to Weezer? Idaho?
Yeah, and also, I don't think my style is that. It's old time fiddling out there, but it's not this old time fiddling.
Right.
There's
I was Harry and I were talking about the fiddlers who we've had at Common Ground on the Hill over the years. Here's a little list. Les Woody, Les Woody. Les Woody was one of the original bluegrass fiddlers, and he played with both Monroe and Stanley.
Okay.
He's an amazing guy. Joe Meadows, Bobby Hicks, then Kenny Kosek from New York. Earl White, old-time fiddler from
he's
down in the valley.
Does he still come around?
He does. In fact, we're hoping he'll be back with us in the summer.
That's great.
Yeah, and Jim Wood. I don't know if you know Jim. He's a contest fiddler and was a Nashville session guy.
Yeah, I think that's where I heard the name. I heard Joe Meadows' name from Arville.
Yeah, no, Joe was one of the great bluegrass fiddlers, and he was. Yeah, he was with Jim and Jesse.
Right.
And also Ralph, also Monroe and Stanley.
That's right.
And then locally, our wonder fiddler, John Glick.
Oh, incredible.
Was one of the, I still don't understand why he hasn't been the cover of Bluegrass Unlimited yet, but he's just a great fiddler, like no one else. And then in the Celtic range, we had Bryan McDowell from the Battlefield Band, Pete Clark, one of Scotland's greatest. We've also had Alistair Fraser and Shetland's Young Heritage. It just goes on and on. So we're really glad that you're here and that you've got this music to bring to us. You were with us last summer, right? Playing in the Bluegrass Staff.
That's right.
Band. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great fun. That was the first time I'd really gotten a chance to play very much with Tom Minty. I'd been on a couple of projects that were recorded at his studio,
Patuxent Records.
Yeah, in Rockville back when that was still going. Has he moved a studio over to his house at this point?
I think he has. That's what I heard from him.
So he may still be recording.
Yeah. We're talking about Tom Minty.
Yeah. Tom actually released this album that I have done recently with Mark Schatz, Grit and Polish.
Grit and Polish. That's your latest project.
That's the latest release. Yeah.
Where can people get that?
Anywhere good music's found. No, they can get it from. They can go to markschatz.net or bryanmcdowell.com. They can order it in both spots.
Great.
Or they could actually. I think they can order it directly from Tom's website as well. Anyway, this past year was great because that was the first time that your event was the first time that I actually was able to spend a lot of time playing, and we actually did with Tom, and we actually did this vocal workshop together. Yeah, which was really, I mean, he's
a force of nature.
His bluegrass harmony, there's just you don't hear that anymore.
Right. Yeah, he's old school.
Yeah, and it's powerful and good.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that happens at Common Ground on the Hill Traditions Week. So we think about it ahead of time. Say, well, who would be good to be playing with one another who maybe haven't done that before?
Yeah.
And we see what kind of energy happens as a result.
Those are I think those are the greatest connections that I remember making on the road. Is people come from different backgrounds and find a way to speak some. They find their common language.
Right.
There's some great musicians that I ended up playing with this year. So again, thank you for that.
Well, thanks for coming. I know it. I reeled you in, as I remember. It's always people.
I took the bait.
You took the bait. People come to Common Ground and they say, well, how did all these people get together? Well, I would say about 1,000 phone calls and emails and talking about what we do and how it's a little bit different from. We're a pretty broad spectrum of the arts, and I like to see it stay that way and have people influencing one another. I would say it's probably time to hear some more music, and it would be your choice, of course, always your choice.
I might switch to a different instrument.
Yeah.
maybe grab a mandolin for this.
A mandolin. There we go. For those of you who don't know what a mandolin is, it's an 8-stringed instrument tuned like the violin.
It's basically just a ukulele.
It is a ukulele, yeah. Tuned in fifths, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And we've had some great mandolin players at Common Ground on the Hill, including Jesse McReynolds. He was here, one of the great innovators, and of course, our dear friend Barry Mitterhoff. It's a long, long list of mandolin players. We're talking about 30 years of history, musical and art history. Now, I'm looking at your mandolin, and you have a tuning device over top of the name. Is this a Collings?
Oh. Yeah, that's unintentional. It is a Collings.
Yeah.
This is, we were mentioning the contests earlier. This was the...
You won that one?
This was the 2010 prize at Winfield.
Whoa. That's worth driving out to Kansas for.
Exactly. That's what I said.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah, Winfield, for those of you who've never been to Winfield, it's worth the trip to see out in the middle of this country all these musicians. There's the National Mandolin Championship, I believe, and also guitar. And there's I'm not sure if it's a National Fiddle Championship, but there is a prize there. And there's also, for those of you who are obscure and have nothing else to do, it's also the home of the Hammer Dulcimer National Championship, which I was always afraid to enter because I knew I wouldn't win. But I just waited long enough to be a judge, and I got to witness that.
Well, yeah, that's. Did you? So you went out there and performed, and you were.
Yeah, a bunch back in the 80s and 90s.
Great.
Yeah, it was an exciting festival. Byron Berline and
exactly.
Newgrass Revival was happening big time at that time, and there we were. So we've got a mandolin tune. What do we have?
So this will actually this will be a song that I wrote a few years ago and is on the Grit and Polish project. So this is Crusoe Flood.
Great.
Well, the old guy knew that the mountain would be washing away when the sun went down. He heard it in his ear, though the sky was clear, and I made him shadow puppets on the ground. I paid no attention to a thing he said. I kept on a hoe until the second the first drop fell, but I wish I'd listened now. So roll up your britches and loosen up the hitches. The team ain't no use now. Just sit back, kick back, get yourself way back from the Crusoe flood. I was trying to get the corn in when the storm started and echoed off the roofs. It rumbled down low and it all went sideways. Something inside turned loose. He said again, we're going down the river, be a good swimmer. And he gave me his horse's bit and took off in the spit. Well, the stream took a detour up at the high fork by the pile of timber. It's flowing both sides of the Kellys, and I give them another half an hour till they're under. I see them packing out, they're taking their sow and ducking through the brush. Now they're gone. So roll up the britches and loosen up the hitches. The team ain't no use now. Just sit back, kick back, and get yourself way back from the Crusoe flood. Now we said goodbye to pretty young Isla, let her go with the kids. The years go by and they don't know why, but they all come back real clean. Now the water's getting high and I'm standing on an island 30 feet wide. I should have been born with gills, now I just now had my fill. So roll up your britches and loosen up the hitches. The team ain't no use now. Just sit back, kick back, and get yourself way back with the Crusoe flood. Just sit back and kick back and get yourself way back with the Crusoe flood. Just sit back, kick back, and get yourself way back.
All right. And the name of that tune again? Song?
Crusoe flood. Crusoe flood.
Crusoe flood.
Yeah, that's it.
And was that a specific flood in a specific place?
There's an interesting story about that. So there were multiple floods in this place, and this is kind of in the backyard of where I grew up. Not literally, but about 10 miles further out from Canton. And Crusoe is a narrow valley with a river flowing through it, and if it floods, it's generally pretty bad. There's no place for the water to go. It doesn't spread into fields. It just kind of keeps rising. And so historically, there have been quite a few floods, and there was actually a really bad one recently, again, after I had written this song. So it generally floods about every 20 to 40 years, something like that.
That's why we have valleys, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, part of the formation of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that was wonderful. Sometimes we forget that the mandolin's a great instrument, just to be playing alone, because it's found so much within a band context.
Yeah, I find it. I gotta say, I find it interesting and curious. I'm wondering your thoughts on this as well, but that so many kind of prominent leaders of bluegrass, people on the edge of bluegrass who we think of, leading it in new directions, have been mandolin players fronting bands.
Interesting, yeah.
If you consider obviously Bill, and I don't think it's just. It doesn't seem to me to be a matter of just the nature of everyone kind of copying Bill. That doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
It seems like something about the position of the mandolin, but Bill, and then David Chrisman, Doyle Lawson, Chris Thiele,
Sam Bush,
exactly.
Yeah, right. Well, there's something about. It's the timekeeper for one.
Yeah.
And those mandolin chops, which have been sort of codified now. It's if you go back and listen to Monroe, and watch what he was doing, he wasn't just playing that offbeat, the way so many bands do it now, just straight through. You could lay it in with a computer the way it's approached in many instances. But if you watch Monroe, he was pushing and pulling back and playing phrases,
yeah, it was a special thing about his playing. I think some modern players are coming back around to that.
Yeah.
Particularly, obviously Ronnie McCoury is staying in that tradition.
Oh, yeah.
I think Jared Walker is.
I don't know Jared Walker.
Jared Walker plays with Billy Strings.
Oh,
and then also I think Dominic Leslie does a bit. It goes in that direction as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see what's happening now with a lot of younger musicians. Back in our day, there was a real defined line between bluegrass and old time music. It wasn't as integrated as you have it now. Now it's very common to see, those two genres really mixing it up. Back then it was almost a challenge.
I'm curious on this. Can you give kind of an example of just? Is this something that you saw in action at festivals and so forth?
Yeah,
right.
And Carlton Haney, who was the great festival entrepreneur, was really good at finding younger bands who did those kinds of crossover things. But that old time approach wasn't necessarily liked by the hardcore bluegrass people. It was like, and in many ways, I think it was somewhat a cultural thing. A lot of the old time Renaissance, at least as far as I can see, had to do with young people finding the old players, and sort of reviving that. And you might say you could say something like, "You're not from around here, are you?" It was that kind of thing. And I think that the old time community didn't have the appreciation for the bluegrass community that had moved from the rural South up to places like Baltimore, where they found factory work, and then made their way out into the suburbs as they made their livings. That's just my take on it. I'm sure a cultural anthropologist could do more with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because there is this, of course, at some point, especially people who are locals, like for instance Arvel, again, he's had an enormous influence on my life, and there was his oldest brother was an old time fiddler, Gordon, and at the time that Arvel was growing up, there wasn't really a real distinction that had labels around it, had words around it, between bluegrass and old time. But I think even at that time it was already growing, because even if you listen to some of Arvel's early recordings from the 40s and 50s, you hear it. His style was very distinct from his brother's, and it had the bluegrass influence, the blues and the speed, the double stops, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know. Years ago, I spent time with an old banjo player, fretless player, in West Virginia, McDowell County.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he would.
Were you at what town? War?
I was on Bull Creek.
Okay.
And Mohawk, Panther, Mohawk is a band, Jaeger.
Yeah.
Back in the coal mines there.
Yeah.
And he referred to it as, he would say, I play the old way, and there are other people that play the new way. But he didn't make a distinction between them or a judgment about it. It was just, there's the new way. In fact, he wanted to sand the frets off of my banjo. So he could play it fretless.
Okay.
Right. He had these banjos that, he did his best to build a decent instrument, but it was tough. And he saw I had this factory-made banjo, an ode banjo, and he wanted to shave those frets off of there, man, so he could play that banjo.
Interesting. So is that where you started, was banjo, or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I was playing Pete Seeger kind of attempt at folk music, and
was it like two-finger Pete Seeger, or more?
It's just what I could do. I was hearing, I remember seeing the Country Gentlemen play when I was in high school, and this, that, and the other. And of course, I was hearing the Osborne Brothers on the radio. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I still don't. But I went down there playing, and I learned from this guy who he just used thumb and index finger. It was his own style, And then there was another guy that played frailing. A guy named Cripple Cleve Klein. Those two pictures there those guys are here in our studio. And he played, he was 82 years old, so I figured he was learning music in the late 1800s. And he was playing drop thumb, So anyway, so here we are. I wanted to bring our listeners up to speed again. I'm Walt Michael, director of Common Ground on the Hill, here in the Jim Bieneman studio in the Folklife Center in the Dean's Cottage on the campus of McDaniel College, with Harry Orlove running the studio. Harry, a dear friend of Jim Bieneman, who we remember fondly and named this room after him. And we're here, of course, with Bryan McDowell. And Bryan, for those of you hearing this later, this won't be helpful news for you, but for those of you hearing this very soon, Bryan's going to have a wonderful concert here at the Carroll Arts Center on the 18th of November. with 2 sets of music, and you bring some pretty powerhouse friends with you. Who's coming to your concert?
I can't say how happy I am to have Mark Schatz with me, of course.
Yeah.
And then we'll also be bringing in a new transplant to the area, Maddie Witler, who is a stellar mandolin player. She played with Della Mae, and before that with the Lonely Heartstrings Band. And then she's had some solo projects as well. Sam Guthridge is going to be rounding it out on banjo. Sam's a good friend of ours, and incredible player as well. And Gaven Largent will be making a special trip up from Nashville, and of course he's from Northern Virginia, I guess around Winchester, and he's just one of my favorite dobro players ever, and so happy that he agreed to be on this.
So he's from Winchester, the home of Patsy Cline and Roy Clark.
Right.
Yeah.
Roy Clark, really?
Roy Clark's from Winchester.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yep.
I knew about Patsy Cline because she lives. Well, there's a street in Winchester that has currently like three banjo players of the year nominees on it.
Living on the street?
Living on that street, yeah. I won't tell you their names or the street, but anyway.
Attract one another, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But what I'm aware of is that I think, if I remember right, the house that Patsy Cline grew up in is at the end of that street.
Wow.
Something like that.
So she still has that magnetic draw.
Yeah.
You know?
It's something. It's a vortex.
Yeah. Winchester's an interesting crossroads. Yeah. Well, so we're really looking forward to your concert, and let's tell people again how to get you online. What's your website?
You can find me at bryanmcdowellmusic.com. Sorry. bryanmcdowell.com. Drop the music.
bryanmcdowell.com. Well, you probably don't go there that often, so that's why you.
Yeah,
forget,
right? It's like, do you remember your own number? No.
No. Right. And the concert, I'm reminded by Harry. Yeah, it would be nice to know where the concert is. The concert is at the Carroll Arts Center at 91 West Main Street in Westminster, Maryland. Now, it's going to be at 7:30 p.m. 2 sets of music with an intermission. We, advise you to come to town early, dine in some of the wonderful restaurants here, and come in and hear this music. It's a beautiful theater, 263 seats. Every seat is good, and the acoustics are wonderful. I remember when they first converted the theater, I went over there to do a little sound check, and I started playing, and I couldn't tell when they brought the sound system in. So I was hearing the room. It's a good room. It's a really good room.
Yeah.
And it feels warm and close in there.
And the sound technician is incredible as well.
Yeah. Yes. Phil Spees.
Yes,
will be doing
our
sound.
good friend.
Yeah. And so we're very excited. So again, the Carroll Arts Center, November 18th, which is a Saturday night. It's next Saturday for those of you who are in real time. And if you're not in real time and listening to this later, we have a full concert series with Common Ground on the Hill at the Carroll Arts Center and also some other places. So go to commongroundonthehill.org. That's organization, commongroundonthehill.org, and look up concerts, and you'll see a long list. I have my annual holiday concert coming up, and we have luminaries like Tony Trischka doing an Earl Scruggs show. We have the brothers from North Carolina, the Kruger brothers, who are just fantastic. This will be the 4th time they've been with us, and a number of other great acts.
When is that? The Kruger brothers?
Pardon?
When is the Kruger brothers show?
You know, I should know, but it's just
Tell
keep
me
listening.
that website again to go to.
Yeah, the website commongroundonthehill.org, and go to concerts. I'm looking here on our list. It's not on that list, which we're sending out soon. I need to make that change. Anyway, the Kruger brothers are a phenomenon. They're just really amazing. Yeah.
That'll be a nice one. And then, did you mention Victor?
Yes,
Furtado?
Victor Furtado. Tell us about Victor.
Victor is a phenom. I first heard about him, I think he was 11 years old, and Mark Mark Schatz, we were driving down the road in the Claire Lynch band, and Mark got in the car and he's like, man, I just did this session at Tom Minty's studio, and there's this little kid player that just walked in with a banjo, and I was like, what's he doing here? And it's Victor Furtado, and he's, and then he starts playing. Victor starts playing in the session, and Mark's jaw just goes to the floor. 11 years old. I think that's right. 11 or maybe 12, something like that was when he recorded this album. I don't remember the name of the album. Anyway, Victor's grown up now, and is a good friend of mine through my girlfriend, Malia
There
Furtado.
You go.
Yeah. So Malia is his older sister, and I'm really pleased at where Victor's been going. Of course, he played with the Wildmans, and just graduated from Berkeley College
School
of Music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's living down. I believe if he's not in Nashville already,
I think he is.
He's there.
In Nashville. Yeah.
I was checking with him. I know he was checking around for some apartments, so I'm glad he found a spot.
He
down
is
there.
phenomenal. I think when I saw him,
he's an innovator.
He was like 8 years old.
Oh,
I
really?
remember. And he was playing the banjo. This was at our Deer Creek Fiddlers convention.
Yeah.
And I went, what is this? And it was funny. He kept playing, and I was a good 30 or 40 feet away. He turned his head and looked at me. He had this awareness of everything around him and was playing.
Yeah.
And he just gave me this look like, what are you looking at? And he kept playing. And he won first prize and won the banjo that day, an 8-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're really excited to see what he's going to bring to us, and that's the first Saturday in February.
He's one of the entities that just kind of people who just come along every once in a while, and you go, there's nothing else like that out there.
Yeah. Well, I want everyone to know how much we work at finding and promoting and helping to produce musicians of your caliber who we feel are in the top drawer and may not be known to people quite yet. You probably would like to know this. We've had a few people come through who ended up pricing us out later on in their lives. Rhiannon Giddens being one of them. We had Rhiannon before she was known. She came before even their band.
Well, that's a good track record to have.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But all it is keeping your ear to the ground and listening for good stuff, and it's happening everywhere.
Right.
So here we go. Yeah, we're rolling. March 9th is the Kruger Brothers. And there we go. March 9th, the Kruger Brothers. Don't miss them. Don't miss any of this. So I want to ask you succinctly here. So what are your plans now? You've traveled around playing with all these great bands, and now you're here, and your identity is. It seems to me you're not the side man you were, even though you could be at any time.
I still work on the side, with some people. I've been working recently with Chris Jacobs, and we'll have some more shows coming up with him, and that's interesting, fun, very interesting and fun. It's a much more electric-oriented band, and so kind of get to stretch in that direction. And I've been working with Mark and John Reichman, some other folks, foreign landers, people around. But then, I mean, my focus at the moment is to kind of focus a little bit more on substance and less on form. Go towards my own material. Just play the material that's beginning to come out. I didn't really write very many songs. I was writing some when I was younger, but not completing anything.
Yeah.
And somewhere recently, there's been this kind of shift where things are kind of coming out fully formed, and so I want to go towards crafting that. Kind of pursuing music more for the art of it, and not so much for the industry.
Right. Well, that's wonderful, and you follow your bliss and do the music that's in your head and your heart, and people will hear it. Well, this is wonderful. How about, I don't think we've heard you play the guitar yet, have we?
I was just thinking about that. What about a Guthrie song?
Oh, that'd be great. Would that be Woody or Arlo?
Woody.
Woody, yeah. Woody Guthrie song. Great. Well, okay. We're here once again in the Bieneman studio, the Jim Bieneman studio at the Maryland Folklife Center at Common Ground on the Hill. And we've been having a delightful time with Bryan McDowell. And he has now switched from fiddle to mandolin and now to the guitar. And who made this guitar? It's a beauty.
This is a Bob Thompson guitar.
Bob
is a West Virginia builder. He built this in 2010. This is the second guitar that I had from him. This is a Koa back and sides, maple binding, and
you all should see this. You all should see this. You come to the concert and see this guitar. It's beautiful.
I'll show it off. I'll have it on a stand out front. And interesting bracing pattern that he uses in this. It's a carbon fiber laminated with spruce, which really, I think you don't see Koa as a tone wood in dreadnoughts very often. And I think this really kind of it gives it that bracing particularly, I think, gives it more power to allow it to kind of stand up to the banjo. And
Koa is a beautiful wood. My dulcimer is made of Koa, and it's like no other. We've copied it exactly with other woods, cherry, etc.
You find that, in comparison to other hammer dulcimers that you've played, do you feel like there's particular characteristics about the Koa and tone quality that? Yeah,
that instrument is sort of it is absorbing the tone or the note and projecting it in a way that none others have. Yeah. It feels like in my instrument that Koa is almost like a banjo rim. Yeah, it's almost like that. Yeah, but
there's a sort of, what I find in Koa instruments is there's a sort of mid-range sustain. Which is nice. That'll be interesting to I'm sure about 2 people out there listening.
Right.
Geeking out about tone woods, but anyway.
Here we go. So, what do you have for us? Do you have a Woody Guthrie song? What song is this?
This is Philadelphia Lawyer.
Ah, the old Philadelphia Lawyer. Beware of those Philadelphia lawyers.
Way out in Reno, Nevada, where the romances bloom and fade. There was a great Philadelphia lawyer making love to a Hollywood maid. Now come, love, and we will go rambling down where the city lights are bright. I'll win you a divorce from your husband, and we can get married tonight. Wild Bill was a gun-toting cowhand, 10 notches he carved on his gun. And all of the boys around Reno, they left Wild Bill's sweetheart alone. One night Wild Bill was returning from riding the range in the cold. He was thinking of his Hollywood sweetheart, and her love is lasting as gold. But as he drew near to the window, 2 shadows she saw on her shade was the great Philadelphia lawyer making love to Bill's Hollywood maid. Now the night was as still as the desert, with the moon hanging high overhead. Bill listened a while through the window, and he could hear every last word they said. Honey, your hands are so pretty and lovely, and your form so rare and divine. Come go back with me to Philadelphia, leave this wild cowhand behind. Now tonight back in old Pennsylvania, among her beautiful pines, there's one less Philadelphia lawyer in old Philadelphia tonight.
Well, all right. Thank you, Bryan McDowell, and we'll see you on Saturday.
We'll see you there. Thank you, Walt. It's great to be with you all this morning. Thanks, Harry.
Yes, sir. So, from the Dean's Cottage, the Jim Bieneman studio, we bid you adieu, and please check in with us again from time to time and share this with everybody you know. We want a big crowd. We want to just spill out of that theater.
Overflowing in the streets.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Bryan. Bye-bye. Common Ground on the Hill is a folk life center for the state of Maryland, in residence on the campus of McDaniel College, situated in the Dean's Cottage, and specifically recording in the Jim Bieneman studio. You can find Common Ground on the Hill and all its goings-ons at commongroundonthehill.org. That's commongroundonthehill.org.